right. So, we're going to get right to the subject matter at hand, right? Obviously, there's two particular subjects that are going to be brought up in this particular live stream. Number one, obviously, the subject regarding Carlos Pratt. Is he the next Anderson Silva? Well, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that is the case. And when we mean Anderson Silva, obviously we mean like his particular style, right? And how he implements a combination of, let's say, boxing along with Muay Thai and then blending it very well. Well, the reason why he does it with ease, and not only just ease, just fluidity, is because he's had over 100 or so matchups in Muay Thai, right? Which I think really propelled him to get ready for MMA in the sense of being ready at any time, having competition that is very familiar, especially in the striking realm. And I'm going to be very curious to see how he's going to do with, let's say, Kamaru Usman in the future, right? Like, how will that look if he was to be in a position where, let's say, he was to get out wrestled? But not to digress, that's going to be the first subject we're going to talk about. Obviously, the main event of the whole entire live stream is going to be Conor McGregor and the trial that he has going on. Now, why is it important for us to talk about this particular trial? Well, for one, a couple of things that you really have to understand, right? There's so much nuances to the case that I think for you to judge it in one particular direction would give a lot of disservice to the justice that you are trying to proclaim or trying to find out the truth or get to the bottom of. And what exactly do I mean by that? Okay, we have a case where there's an accusation towards Conor McGregor. Now, is the accusation warranted in any kind of way? Uh, right now, the evidence that I see and the answer that I see is that no. The reason why I say no, that there isn't a lot of substantial evidence to say that, hey, you know what, this guy is guilty of this particular matter, is because of the insufficiency and the inconsistency in the story of the plaintiff. There's just a lot of inconsistencies that are going on. And we're going to talk about those inconsistencies. But first, the number one thing that you have to understand is that when it comes to understanding stories, especially in this live stream, especially in this channel that I have, right? One of the things that I emphasize is that there is no such thing as the pure good guy and the pure bad guy of a story. There is no such thing. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason why is because some people are guilty of some things that maybe others are really accusing them of. Like, in other words, is it a possibility that Connor is actually a rapist? Absolutely. Absolutely. But what about this story, though, with this particular person? Nikita is her name, the plaintiff, right? Is this the case that says, hey, you know what, this is Connor in a nutshell? And the answer is no. You want to know why it's not? The reason being is because Conor McGregor invited her, and she invited herself in terms of having that mutual agreement that, hey, you know what, I'm going to show up here. This is where I'm going to be at. This is the appointment. And these are the stipulations behind that. So when you have all of those things going on, I mean, it's hard to put anything on her side. And that's just the God honest, objective truth behind this particular story that we are looking at. Okay, so here's another thing you need to understand, right? this does not exonerate Conor McGregor from his past transgressions, because they are their own individual merit in how it should be judged. You understand what I mean by that? So, in other words, just because this particular case, right, is not as clear cut and dry, it doesn't mean that the other cases are uh, clear. They're not all equal. That's the main thing that you got to understand. They're not all going to be the same. So, with that in mind, uh, again, you got to judge it individually on its own. Uh, Another thing you need to understand too, right? There's a lot of accountability issues that are going on with this particular story. A lot. And this is, by the way, a big thing that a lot of people don't really talk about. Accountability issues. You got to ask yourself, who was invited where and who obliged to that particular invitation? Do you understand what I'm saying? So, in other words, if you got invited to do this and then you had decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to take up Conor McGregor's offer and go there. What do you think you're being invited to do? Okay, now let's try and analyze this in different ways, right? What was this person in terms of their job, in terms of their occupation? And from what we understand through public records, this person was a hairdresser, correct? So, as a hairdresser, what do you have any relation with Conor McGregor, especially if your specialty is women's hair? Well, none at all. And that's the point that I'm trying to get at. Do you think she's trying to hang out with Conor, or Conor wants to hang out with her because he's interested in her intellectual ability? I don't think that's the case. What I think the case is going on is that they were two mutual adults consenting to whatever action it is that they wanted to do. And the other one did not want to take responsibility because guess what? The other one had, I believe, a partner or a person that she had already bought a house with, I believe already had a daughter with, which, by the way, for us in the Islamic world, it's very strange, right? Either way, look, that's not for us to judge. That's not for us to judge one way or the other. But again, bastardized relationships are bastardized relationships, and you get what you pay for when it comes to that situation. I mean, look, this is a person that was going to go buy a house with this woman, right? And so now he wants part of the case. You got to imagine the perpetual humiliation that he has to face amongst all this, right? Because look, let's backward track a little bit, right? Because the other Conor McGregor video that I did, I had to put on the members section only, and I'm going to tell you why. The reason why I had to put it on the members section was because I think the title in and of itself was very controversial. Maybe not so much of the content that was in it, but what was even more controversial, I think, was just the title. So I just decided to put it on a member stream only. You guys can check it out on the member section of this stream. But I did talk about it. So since I'm on live right now, I'm going to discuss it, right? 2018, they had met, and this is when the entire hotel case that they are talking about is happening, right? From all the evidence that has been gathered and everything that has been dealt with in this whole entire situation, you can't help but lean towards the side of the fact that she wanted to be there, but regretted being there because of the partner that she was already with. And the humiliation of being caught, I think, is what led her to being the way that she was. Look, here's what's really funny about this whole entire situation, right? Here's what's really funny about it. when they played the video that was taking place in a hotel, for whatever reason, she did not want to watch it. She said that she was traumatized by it. Now, is that a cop out? I think there is a good explanation for that, right? Maybe some other psychologists are going to say something to the effect of, hey, you know what? She was distraught. Okay, but what is distraught about her when she looks happy in the particular CCTV footage that they find, right? What is so distraught about her? Well, obviously, absolutely nothing, right? The reality is that she is distraught based on what had happened when the cameras were not there. Okay, so in other words, everything that is tangible evidence, everything that is available to determine the mind state, to determine the coherent capabilities of the person in that present moment that we are analyzing, for whatever reason, she's uncomfortable with the reality that she looks like a coherent uh, participant. That's what it seems like, a coherent participant, and she doesn't want to take any responsibility for that notion. So, in other words, this is one of the things that you got to understand about this particular matter at hand, right? I think accountability is a problem for a lot of people. It's a problem for many people in terms of not wanting to accept it. Now, why is that? I think because when it comes to accountability, it sometimes shames people. You know, there's a term for it, right? It's sort of called, how do I say this? Undressing. They call it undressing, sort of say. And what exactly does that mean when a person says undressing? Well, what it means is that you are somehow uh, undressing them down towards every flaw that they have. Now, is that a point of embarrassment for some people? It is. It is, but there are people out there that view that as some sort of badge of honor. Not a badge of honor, but more like, hey, you know what? I'm glad that this person was here to try and check me for this terrible notion that I once believed, but really has, a huge flaws behind it, right? And and then some can look at that as a way of improvement, as to say, hey, you know what? I have a room to improve on based on this criticism. But then you also got to understand that you can't criticize people to a harsh level that now they don't want to have to listen to anything that you say, right? A lot of people that give good advices, they often think that being rude or being aggressive or somehow being out of line or out of touch with someone's feelings is somehow the best way to approach someone or give them advice. And I don't know, maybe for some people that works. Obviously, in a military structure, there's a place for that. If you notice in basic training in most military camps, they often yell at you, degrade you, and yeah, sort of strip you down from your individuality in the beginning, right? So, what is the purpose of that? Well, obviously, the main purpose of that is to strip down your individuality and get you programmed with a team. So, in other words, there's a lot of accountability going on. Well, here's something you got to understand. In the outside world, obviously, in the civilian world, in the non military world, there's an obvious sense of individuality. And as such, rightfully so. Because if you live in America and you stand by the values that it preaches of freedom and things of that nature, then you're going to be okay with that. You're going to be okay with individuality. But with individuality comes a lot of questions of accountability that we are speaking about right now. That is exactly what we are talking about. We are talking about the lack of accountability on the part of the plaintiff that is dealing with Conor McGregor's case right now. That is the issue that we have in front of us. And you want to know why that is? I'm going to tell you right now. We live in a society that doesn't give consequences to people that don't step outside of their accountability. And how does this relate to this case? Okay, so it relates to this case in a sense where this woman obviously knew she regretted doing what she was doing because she obviously was about to buy a house with this guy. And then next thing you know, she's shacked up in a hotel with McGregor and his homie, right? I mean, very similar to the Tupac story that had happened to him in 1994, right? I think a few New York dudes, or maybe some dudes that were from LA or from the Bay or this and that, but I think they were mostly all East Coast dudes. They all got in this situation where Tupac had lured a girl into a hotel room, but I think she was initially just interested in him. And then next thing you know, one thing led to another. She woke up after Tupac was sleeping. And then now, next thing you know, she's accusing other people of doing uh, heinous acts. Okay, so now you look at McGregor. What is the similarity with him and Tupac in that situation, right? The one girl that was sort of interested in him, that had the particular, uh, I think, rapport. Because from what I understand, she knows the family members of D. And that's important to understand here, right? Because obviously there's a family connection there. But either way, it was consensual, but it was consensual with regret. And that right there is the accountability that she doesn't want to take. And so by saving face, she goes and creates a lawsuit, which, by the way, is kind of strange. And I got a few questions with that, right? Like, what makes this a non-criminal trial, but rather a civil trial? That is the biggest question that I have for this. And by the way, we're going to keep up with that particular topic in a few minutes from now, right? But first, we're going to talk about Carlos Prates. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the Conor McGregor case. If you want to listen to a few more details of it extensively, please rewind back a few minutes, maybe even 15 minutes from now. And yeah, just start from there. But for now, the subject matter at hand is going to be Carlos Prates. 100 Muay Thai fights. Now, why is this useful in the game of mixed martial arts? Look, in the game of Muay Thai, you can prevent yourself a lot of brain damage, especially if you have great defense. And that is how this man was able to accumulate over 100 fights. Now, are there benefits to this? Yes. Well, are there cons to this? Absolutely. I think that there is a longevity issue that we may have to talk about sometime in the near future, not in the immediate future, but sometime in the near future. And we're talking about Carlos Prates. But for now, the 100 fights that he's accumulated, I think, has really helped his mixed martial arts career in terms of just looking very fluid in the way that he executes his technique. So the way that you see him execute the boxing and the Muay Thai put together is what compares him to the likes of Anderson Silva. With the boxing that he has going on and the mixture of Muay Thai, who does that remind you of? Obviously, Anderson Silva, and being brilliant, that sort of helps with the persona. Not only that, also the 100 fights Thai. Izzy has had 75 to 80 kickboxing fights. I think 75 wins and 5 losses, something to that degree of his particular stature. I'm talking about Izzy, right? So now with Izzy, That's a lot of fights that he's accumulated in which he was able to use that to defend his title multiple times and fight multiple times a year. Even Alex Pereira, the same. You could say the same thing about him. That is how he was able to accumulate all these high numbered of fights. Okay, was being able to have that experience in another professional sport and then taking it into mixed martial arts, which obviously has a lot more dynamics in terms of the mixing of the striking and the grappling and the anaerobic muscular rhythm that you have to operate in terms of physical output. So it really helped, right? Did it not? Well, look at the fluidity in the way that he knocked out Neil Magny. It was as if he was there 100 times over in that particular position. What do I mean by that? Look, some guys are inexperienced, right? When they're in there are spots that make them feel really unsure of themselves. For example, Michael Venom Page, why does he put his hands down in certain spots? Well, that is because he's been in so many kickboxing and taekwondo matches where he had to gauge a certain level of distance where he knows a safe range of being able to put your hands down. And as a result, well, he understands and feels comfortable in certain spots. The way that Prates fights, it is as if he is comfortable in every spot. And how do you feel that way? How do you get to the point where you start feeling that way inside the octagon or any ring that you compete in? And the answer is this: the 100 Muay Thai fights that he's accumulated, every step and every part of that ring and every part of that cage, he now understands down to the T. He understands how it feels, how it bounces, how it smells, how it looks, and how it's going to feel at a certain part of the day. That is the reality of uh that is a reality of having 100 fights in Muay Thai and then translating it into MMA. Now, here's the problem. The longevity issue. Is it an issue? Absolutely. It is absolutely going to be a serious issue. And the reason why it's going to be an issue. Oh, hold on. Got to read some. Hi. Karen Hope says hi. Okay, sorry about that. And then Daily News of Sports says hi. All right, that's awesome. Got a few people tapping in. Sorry, I didn't tap into those chats. If anybody wants to drop a comment or a chat, keep going. But yeah, I can keep going with this particular story right now. Don't forget, we still have to talk why this is a civil case and not necessarily a criminal case, and what is the difference between that. And I'd like to give a shout outs to the Irishmirror Independence, which is a newspaper company in Dublin. This is some of the information that I got from, obviously, in some of their podcasts. And then also, I believe, Critical Eye MMA, which I believe is an Irish YouTuber, right? So these are some of the information and places that I got this. And yeah, just wanted to do it the professional way and sort of cite those sources like that. So here we go. Okay. Wait, we're going to get back to Carlos Pratt and the cons of why the 100 Muay Thai fights may not help later on. But for now, let's talk about why this is a civil case and not a criminal case. I think that in order for a police force to, let's say, file a complaint for a criminal case, they have to have enough substantial evidence that would be approved of by the DA or the police force itself, depending on the jurisdiction and what part of the world you're at. Obviously, we're talking about Ireland and Dublin, and they have a different set of laws that will operate in a different way. Obviously, contrasting to that of America, Great Britain, or Australia, or the other three eyes of the world, right? Or the five eyes of the world, rather. But So so yeah, going back to the contrasting laws that contend with each other here, right? Uh, they can't move forward with a criminal complaint because there's not enough sufficient evidence to which they feel like they don't have enough to win. Okay, but with this particular plaintiff, this is a civil case. So she has a lawyer that believes she can win, and as a result, there's a little bit more incentives for her to go after it. Whereas with the DA or the police, they feel like, okay, you know what, within our own professional understanding of the law, perhaps maybe we don't have a shot at winning. So as a result, and the lack of winning or the lack of substantial evidence in the side of the law or the Irish Garda in this particular instance, they're like, we're not going to move forward with that. But her, the plaintiff, as a lawyer, and her team and her legal team that's pursuing the case, she has every right to go after it in ways that the law feels that it is not substantial to go after. So as a result, this is the way that I feel about this particular story. And after I'm done talking about this, I'm going to talk about some real uncensored version of this particular stream that I'm probably going to have to put on the members section. But either way, stay tuned for that because I'm going to give you reasons why this whole entire thing happened. And there are societal, uh, well, even religious, particular contrasting uh, civilization clashes that are entangled with this. Okay, but stay tuned for that. So once again, it's not a case that the government itself wanted to take because they feel that there's not enough evidence. But when it comes to, let's say, their side, they feel that they want to pursue it because there's a financial incentive, which is the reason why they are doing and they are part of a civil case. So that's why she has the right to move forward with a civil case and maybe even get a settlement out of it, or perhaps try to fight it until the end. But my final verdict on this particular matter is that I don't think she has enough evidence. The entire evidence shows nothing but compliance and consent on her part. If they can show anything other than that, I don't think that she has a case of winning in this civil matter. And that is the reason why there is no win when it comes to even trying to take this into a criminal court system. And the other side of this is, man, you got to understand Connor, okay, is tapped in with certain people in that part of the world, right? Both in the underworld and both in the world of elites, even though there are a lot of elites out there that are sort of against him. But either way, that is what you have going on with Conor McGregor. Now, here's the other side of this particular topic that I think is worth mentioning and I think is really worth bringing up. Okay, there are serious societal uh, downfalls that we can analyze from this particular story. And what way is that? Okay, number one, you got to understand, right? This is a woman that went out and did whatever she wanted, right? Obviously, was a hairdresser. Look, the way that we view women in Islam and then in comparison to, let's say, the Western world, obviously there's going to be contrasting values. But these contrasting values have a reason. And there is a reason why Muslim men, I'm sorry to tell you guys, don't face these types of trials that people who just live a life in a slingshot kind of manner, not really caring about spirituality or not really caring about tradition or anything like that. They just go about life aimlessly. So as a result, they put themselves in these humiliating situations that, unfortunately, for you people to never understand it, that conservative, real Muslims will never put themselves through. And that's the reality of that situation. This woman that you go and you champion and say, oh, so she's independent, she's this and that. Well, guess what? This is the back result of it, man. She's for the streets, bro. She's for the streets. That's just what it is, and that's just the reality of it. So going back to Carlos Pratt. Okay, the cons of why he should not have 100 fights, or or why it's detrimental later on in his career. Obviously, at some point, he's going to break down. We've seen the downside of it with Israel Adesanya. With Israel Adesanya, what did we witness later? He just looked like he was very much exhausted in the Sean Strickland fight, right? Now, why am I comparing now Izzy to Carlos Pratt? Well, we're just only looking at, let's say, the latter days of his career, and that could mean somewhere in the 5 year range or maybe the 10 year range. But either way, there is a range and there is a limit. So you look at Adesanya and the way that he performed against Strickland. You have to think, right? Prior to that, his whole entire schedule was absolutely stacked from top to bottom, right? He was like in every other pay per view within a year. And the next thing you know, he accumulated like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 title defenses, Israel Adesanya. But at some point, your body gives out. You need a certain level of rest. GSP did it the best. Really, he did. And that is the reality of this particular situation. So, what do we have now? What we have right now is a fresh and fit and ready Carlos Pratt, right? He's primed. He's ready to fight, I think, for the belt, in my opinion. Let's be honest about it. Do I think Carlos Pratt has the ability to fight for the belt right now? Let's take a look at some of the top people in 170 right now, right? He wants to go at Jack Della Maddalena. Is there a good fight in that? I think, man, I think that's a banger of a fight right there. I think those two guys are going to throw down. They're going to exchange some hard blows. And not only that, I think they're going to throw leg kicks at each other and try to test whose shin is going to be harder. And I think that exchange is going to have Carlos Pratt in the better side of it. But we don't even know if that fight is going to be signed or not, right? Although it's a good fight, it's a good call out that he did. But once again, like I said, having too much fights, I think is great for experience. But then at the same time, you also have to learn when to cut it down a little bit and learn how to rest, right? For the sake of sports science. So that's sort of the downfall of Israel Adesanya, was he didn't really adhere to those particular sciences and whatnot. But that is all that we really have right now for Carlos Pratt, his career trajectory and where it's going and how it's going to go. What else do we have right now? That is all that we have for the Conor McGregor trial right now. They're going to continue to have trial every day. I think they're at day 4 right now from as we speak. So we'll see how far this trial goes. We'll see how Carlos Pratt goes in his career. And for now, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next episode, inshallah.